The 7th generation of consoles were revolutionary in a number of ways, from party chat to proprietary wireless controllers becoming standard in gaming. Among these changes was the shift for players to choose how they played their games. But that wasn't exclusively a benefit to players. It allowed companies like Microsoft to roll out games in a low-risk fashion with limited overhead to their captive audience. Starting in 2008, Xbox rolled out their Summer of Arcade promotion via Xbox Live. This initial offering had a killer slate of titles like Braid, Geometry Wars, Bionic Commando Rearmed, and Castle Crashers. These games came out at a machine gun cadence, and each at least garnered a solid critical reception, while a couple like Castle Crashers were breakout hits. As Xbox Live Arcade was showcasing great games, many of which would also be available on PlayStation Network, what it was doing also was showing players and these companies there was a different way to access games than on a disc you picked up at Walmart. Of course, this was already standard practice for PC gamers, but it was migrating to a much wider market at this point. There would be misconceptions of this new format for the console ecosystem that would take some time to navigate, such as, for some players, the idea that digital-only games were lesser than to ones which got a retail release, almost as if they had the odor of direct-to-video movies. But this was a new era. It was just 1 year after Xbox's Summer of Arcade play struck gold, in 2009, that Netflix streamed more movies than it delivered via DVD for the first time. A media consumption revolution was happening, and video games were on the front line. Let's fast forward a few years. It's 2013 and the PS4 generation has started. These systems had a relatively robust storage unit, 500 gigabytes compared to the base 20 or 40 gigabytes of the PS3 launch era. This opened the door to PS4 users gaining the ability to have fully digital libraries, but old habits die hard, and disc-based sales still accounted for most of the market share. This would slowly erode, and it was bound to. As younger gamers flooded the zone, meaning the PS4 was their first system, it meant they didn't particularly have any attachment to physical media. And why would they? This new generation didn't grow up with it. They grew up just needing mom or dad's credit card to buy what they wanted on the PSN. However, it wasn't just that the media marketplace was changing to another format. The way people interface with games was evolving with it. When PS4 Pro arrived in 2016, it came with 1 terabyte of storage. Sony sent a message: "We want to train you to start buying your games digitally. We'll invest in the storage space of the platform, and you interact with our store only. This way, we don't have to make as many plastic boxes with discs, and you don't have the clutter. Win-win, right?" I'll return to that last point later. Just 4 years on, Sony's financial results showed that digital sales narrowly eclipsed physical for the first time. This was a massive leap from digital being just 32% of the pie in fiscal year 2017. Later, in 2020, we moved into the PS5 generation, and in another first, players were given the choice to have a digital-only console. The jump to digital software skyrocketed. In Q1 of fiscal year 2021, early in the PS5's lifecycle, digital purchases according to Sony amounted to 71% of the pie. Just 1 year later, this became about 80%. Things were rapidly accelerating. Even for publishers that hardcore gamers love, like Capcom, the splits weren't exactly break-even. For Q2 of fiscal year 2024, Capcom reported it sold 10.5 million games, and about 10 million of those, or 95%, were digital. Keep in mind that this data is comprehensive for all platforms, meaning it piles in PC digital-only sales too. Still bleak for the physical lover out there, no doubt. But there are favorable variables that should be considered. Japanese gamers, for example, where a huge swath of our favorite games are still developed and enjoyed by their fans, seem to think differently. According to a 2024 story from The Verge, Japanese gamers are still likely to buy their games physically. Now let's be clear, at this point in time, Nintendo hardware is king in Japan, and that's why we see Switch 2 coming with full physical media support. But this story isn't a death knell. When compared with other markets, it seems Japan still absolutely loves physical games, says Kantan Games Serkan Toto, a veteran watcher of the Japanese industry, who points to the most recent survey from Japan's Computer Entertainment Suppliers Association. This organization found that physical games accounted for about 70% of total sales in Japan in 2022, including 65% of PS5 games and 77% of Switch releases. By comparison, Sony says that 70% of full PS4 and PS5 game sales in 2022 were digital across the world. Now back to my own words. That across the world bit is important for Sony. They want to sell games everywhere, not just to people in the West. And not everybody that can get a PS5 or PS6 will have kick-ass internet. The solution? Discs. It's why this is an open question. Sony themselves would love to terminate physical media's life. It streamlines their content delivery, but they need it to sell games and foster fan bases in burgeoning markets. Maron, enough with the history here, just tell me about PS6! Well, here's the thing. I think Sony may have just given us the playbook for what PS6 will look like for physical media fans. The launch of the PS5 Pro in November 2024 was a test for what PS6 will bring. Again, they want to direct their audience to meet their corporate objectives. If you aren't aware, they unveiled the PS5 Pro as being the first ever hardware release in company history that doesn't come with a disk drive installed on the unit. It is sold separately via PlayStation Direct, which pissed people off. But when you think about the data we just talked about, it isn't surprising. People have chosen, and reasonably so, the convenience factor of digital. In layman's terms, they hate swapping discs. In my opinion, I think Sony reads the data loud and clear. They know there is a minority but vibrant community of customers who love physical media and PlayStation, and I think they will want to cater to that. But ultimately, what it will end up looking like is probably similar to what just happened with the PS5 Pro. Now, as far as the production of physical discs are concerned, dwindling sales across the board mean companies want to scale down their disc production business as much as they can.
So why should I care? I can access my games digitally still, right?
Well, many enthusiasts out there argue that game preservation is an ongoing issue and important. Take Forza Horizon 4 for example. It's a 2018 game that was recently delisted by Microsoft, likely due to music license conflicts. Red Dead Redemption 2 came out in the same year. Can you imagine Rockstar Games delisting it because Willie Nelson no longer approved of his voice being featured in a song? No, that would be outrageous, of course. But it's happening actively to great games. On the flip side, there's the whole notion of disc rot, where no matter what, these Blu-ray discs are going to fail after an uncertain period. So just having the disc doesn't mean you're necessarily preserving anything. It would have to keep getting reprinted indefinitely for it to quote-unquote never go bad. Then there's the question of ownership. Do you own your own games digitally? Can you share your game with a friend like we used to do all the time? The answer is no, you don't really own it. You have access to a license for it. And no, you can't share it either. There are downsides to opting into this company-friendly posture. It's not a big deal for most people, but we're giving away things in the name of convenience, and we ought to be aware of it. One other consideration is the notion of the storefront. On PlayStation, for example, if you have a digital-only console, you're locked to a single storefront with no bargaining chips. If you have a disk drive, you're not. I can and do compare prices between PSN and the disc versions, and often I find better deals on the disc version of a game. This isn't an issue for PC users. They can compare prices between Steam, GOG, Windows, and the Epic Game Store to find the best deal for them. There's also a phenomenon, for example, where PlayStation has increased the price of older titles to accommodate their business objective. They have the right to do this, but as a consumer, I'm looking out for myself, and so should you. One recent set of examples is with both Horizon Zero Dawn and Days Gone, two titles that Sony has done a PS5 remaster for. They were almost giving these games away for $5 to $10, but now they're much pricier on the PlayStation 5. If you had a disc drive, you could theoretically go to Amazon or eBay and get a copy for cheaper. Lastly, disc drives are part of the console ecosystem's heritage. Going and getting a new game, gifting somebody a game, or letting a friend borrow one are rites of passage. Perhaps these are antiquated notions, but in giving up physical media, you do lose a part of your identity. Xbox already capitulated, but I think PlayStation can remain a torchbearer and recognize there is a niche for this business. To use the music analogy, the dominant CD era is long done, but we can still sell vinyl records to fans who give a shit. In making this video, I am neither trying to come across as a physical or digital media evangelist. I'm a fan of both. I actively buy games digitally and physically, and I really do not care what you do. But I think giving up physical games totally would be regrettable. There is a place for both in our ecosystem, and I think we ought to not be so apathetic about just bending the knee entirely to digital and streaming options. In my opinion, consumers should have a choice with PS6, and I hope Sony gives us that option. But nothing is guaranteed. What do you guys think out there? Am I totally out of touch, or has this video resonated with you? Let me know in the comments. My hope with this video was to make you think about why this is happening and what makes sense for you personally. If you enjoyed this video, stick around for more like it. See ya!